Hey everybody, welcome to Cityscape's live Q&A edition. This will be actually like the first time I think going live. I've done some other live stuff, but tonight we're going to be just kind of doing some kind of overall Q&A for some brewers that want to pop on, ask some questions. But more specifically, I'm going to be going through kind of a demonstration of what a day two of a kettle sour would look like. So I have a kettle sour that I've been souring overnight. We're going to be going through that a little bit, checking that out. We're also going to be talking about what's going to happen today, and then what's going to happen after fermentation is complete, which we're going to be adding blackberries to the sour. So we're making a blackberry kettle sour. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, let me grab a beer. Let's wait for some folks to get on, and then we'll start the little demonstration. I'm going to show you how I check the pH of this thing, and we'll get started. So with that, grab yourself a beer if you haven't got one already. I am drinking a Uptown IPA. Let me know what you guys are drinking as well. I'm drinking this one. This was a beer I did a couple of weeks ago, or actually probably about a couple months ago, actually about a month ago now or so, and I entered it into a competition and ended up getting second place in this one, so it was very, very good. It's called Uptown American IPA recipe, and that one you can check out a couple of videos back. I did that one. This is a real good one. So anyone looking to do a decent kind of citrusy all-around West Coast IPA, check out that video. This is Uptown IPA. So cheers. Let me know what you're drinking, or if you have anything brewing. If you have any questions, now's the time. Go ahead, leave those in the chat too. And then we'll get started on this day two of my Blackberry kettle sour here shortly. So for day one, if you haven't watched any of my kettle sour videos, I do a lot of them, and mainly because my wife is not a huge beer drinker, believe it or not. So she likes kettle sour. She likes, citrusy stuff like that. So I keep a kettle sour almost all the time on tap. I have a 4-tap kegerator, and one of those is generally, except for right now, is for her. So I go ahead and keep a kettle sour on for that. The sour that I'm doing today is a base recipe that I do for all my sours, right? So I use about 7.5 pounds of white wheat and about 5.5 pounds of Pilsner, and it keeps it like that cloudy appearance. So when you add fruit to it too, it's like really, really good. This one's a blackberry, and it's probably one of the best sours that I make because I love the blackberry flavor in the sour. Kind of gives it that a little bit of sweetness with the tart, but the blackberries themselves are kind of tart. So I think it plays really, really well with kettle sours in general, even though you can add whatever fruit you want. I do mangoes, I do, cherries, raspberries, you name it. But the recipe, the base recipe, mainly stays the same. So again, the mash and everything for a kettle sour is exactly the same. So everything you would be doing for your normal all grain brew day, or even extract, again, you could do that, is exactly the same. When you go through the mash, you get it in to your boil kettle. So any salt additions you're going to add, any reductions for your chlorine, that kind of thing, we're going to go ahead and put all that stuff in like we normally would for a regular brew day. In this case, the kettle sour really only happens after you get your full boil, and you boil it for about 15 minutes, kill off any kind of wild bacteria that might be in there, and it helps reduce the volume a little bit too. And then the sour happens by adding like a probiotic drink or Lactobacillus plantarum. In this case, I use this product called Good Belly Probiotics, and then in the ingredients, you can actually see the last thing on there is that Lactobacillus plantarum. So it's the 299V. So if you're looking for like a probiotic drink that has that in there, this is that 32 ounce. The flavoring in here really doesn't matter. You can use really anything you want because that kind of falls out when you're in the beer. Hey, Victoria, drinking a Nanny State. So a low ABV beer. That's good. I have a couple friends that have been doing that as well. So checking out the kind of low end ABV stuff. So the Good Belly anyway has that bacteria that's going to sour overnight. It's not going to ferment, so you don't have to worry about getting like a Krausen or anything like that in there. It's going to sour this beer anywhere between 18 and 24 hours. So it's actually sitting about 24 hours since I did the first portion of the brew day today. It's still pretty hot, so I'm hoping once I get this burner going here in a little bit that it's not going to cook too bad, but it's still like 90 degrees where I'm at, 97 degrees Fahrenheit for the feels like temperature. So it's pretty warm out still, and so we're going to be keeping the fan on at least over here and drinking a cold one while we're doing this tonight. But now that it's been sitting here, it after you take your beer off the burner after your 15 minutes, you want to cool that down to about 100 degrees or so. And then you really don't need to keep it on heat for that good belly to work, but you should kind of end it high, like 105, 100 degrees or so, and then pour this stuff in there. And then I covered it with saran wrap, left it right in my kettle. Sometimes I also put it in like a glass carboy, but in this case tonight I just put it in my kettle. And then I sprayed Star San on the backside of this saran wrap with a cling wrap, and just let it sit overnight. So that's doing its sour process right now. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to check this. So once it's in the kettle originally, after you cool it down to 100 degrees, I do add a little bit of lactic acid to that. And so usually that equates to about, to get it from about like your 5.2, 5.3 mash pH, it needs about somewhere between 8 and 12 milliliters or so of lactic acid. And so you kind of put a little bit in, you test it, you put a little bit in, test it until it gets down to from 5.2, 5.3 down to 4.5. And so today, after the 24 hours, it should have dropped from that 4.5 pH to somewhere around 3.5 or even lower than that. And so I'm kind of shooting for like 3.3, but wherever it's at right now, we're going to start it. So about 24 hours is perfect. If you add less than 32 ounces of this, you're going to want to do a little bit longer, right? So I know others have put in about half of that container and done it for about 48 hours or so. But again, you're going to want to check it after a period of time. And after you've done it a couple of times, you kind of know how fast it's going to sour. But that's the kind of the process you're going for. So let me know if you have any questions. We're going to get started kind of on the brew day side of this one. But if you have questions just in brewing in general, go ahead and put them in the chat. Happy to answer any questions. That's what this is all about. So as we're brewing, we're going to have a couple beers, answer some questions, and we'll get after it. So I got my pH meter here. This is one I use all the time. It's a pretty decent one. When I first started Kettle Sour, some of my videos have an older one. Those, these things have gotten a lot better and a lot cheaper since I started doing Kettle Sour. So this one is a Dr. Meter one. I also have this, I think, linked in most of my videos underneath my videos of the equipment that I use. But this one is really, really accurate. So you'll get this, you'll calibrate it, and then you really don't have to calibrate it all that much after you do it the first time, where my other one was consistently off, and I was always having to check it right beforehand and dial it in and that kind of thing. I only check this thing every couple of weeks, maybe a month or something like that if I'm doing a bunch of sours or something. But I use this every time that I'm brewing just to check the mash pH. And I didn't always think that my last one was that accurate. It was accurate enough to tell that I dropped a bunch between day 1, day 2 of the Kettle Sour stuff. But this meter is pretty good. So I'd check this out. It's only about $30 on Amazon. So Dr. Meter for a pH meter. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pop the lid off this guy. I already kind of cleaned it with some distilled water. So we're going to go ahead, open this saran wrap up and see where we're at pH wise. Again, it should be somewhere between like 3.5 and 3.3 pH right now. So we'll turn this on, see where we're at. All right, so we're already under 3.5. Takes a couple of seconds here to get this thing accurate. You don't really want to shake it all that much. You just kind of want to submerge it and leave it in there. And you'll be able to tell, right, when you open this thing, you'll get kind of a funk smell from the sourness going on, and that's great. That's what it's supposed to be like, right? So don't think you've ruined your beer or anything like that. As you start boiling this thing, you're going to raise it over that 150, 170 degrees anyway. It's going to kill off all the bacteria that's souring this. So we're sitting, it says it's at 3.4, 3.42 or so. So that's perfect. So like I said, right between 3.3 or 3.5 is where I was shooting for. So that's great. So I'll go ahead and clean that thing off in a little bit. We don't want to leave that nasty bacteria on there. So I'll clean it with some Star San, and then you pour distilled water on there to rinse it off, so you can put these kind of protective caps back on it so it stays, the diode in there kind of stays moist inside of the little tip. So that's one thing you want to do too, is not leave that little protective cap off, because if you break this little bulb in here, little tester diode thing, that's not good. So go ahead and we're going to get this thing on my natural gas burner. We're going to get that thing started up and heating up, and then we're going to boil this thing for 45 minutes today. We did 15 minutes the first day. we're going to do 45 minutes the second day, and that'll be your full boil. If you're doing the first day, you don't want to add any hops or anything like that, right? You're going to add all of your hops on your second day. You don't need to do anything bittering hops or anything like that. If you do add hops, sometimes I do, but it'll be on the second day, and I would add very little just for kind of aroma or something like that. In most cases, the sour is enough. And then we're going to add fruit, and that's going to kind of overpower any hops you really add in there anyway. But if you do a small amount of fruit or no fruit at all, you could do one with no fruit. You can add a bunch of hops in your secondary or in your second day process when you normally would boil. But it just would be 45-minute mark and after is when you're going to want to add those hops. So let me get this thing on the burner, and we'll get it started. Again, let me know what you guys are drinking. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments and the chats. Happy to answer them as we're going through here. We're going to be sitting around this pot for about 45 minutes, so it gives me something to do. And then we're also going to be kind of prepping our fruit. So when this thing's done, I'll kind of show you how I put the blackberries and stuff in a secondary before and after, or excuse me, after fermentation and before we keg it. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing on the burner here. Let's see if I can turn it so you guys can all see what's going on. This is my Hurricane burner. It's a natural gas burner. One of the better things that I bought. Not having to do any propane exchanges and stuff like that anymore, so that's nice. And it's really quiet. You'll notice that when you turn it on here. So that's on full blast right now. And if you were doing propane, this would be sound like a jet engine right now. You probably can't even pick it up on the camera right now, but. All right, so that thing's going. We're going to keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't boil over. Same old new day. Hey, Northwest, how's it going? You drinking anything? Happy Sunday weekend still anyway. Let me know what you guys are drinking. Do you have any questions? Again, for those jumping on, we're doing kind of a tutorial on a kettle sour. Kind of explained the first day process a little bit already. It's soured overnight. We're getting the second day started where we kill the live bacteria that soured it overnight. And then we're going to boil this for 45 minutes today. We're going to cool it down like we normally would with beer. And then we're going to pitch our yeast afterwards. So happy to answer any questions while we're sitting here waiting for this thing to heat up and start our boil. And then we'll set our timer once that thing gets kind of a rolling boil. Also, is my audio good? Do I need to get a little bit closer, that kind of thing? Spain lager, that's nice. A Mexican lager this time of year, or Mexican or Spanish lager, any lager really. I like a little peppery bite in my lagers. I do a Mexican lager, it's pretty good, but I don't like a real hot pepper. I just want that kind of chili flavor in a Mexican or Spanish lager. But that'd be a great beer right now because it is hot right here. We said it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit still. It was higher than that earlier today, but it's still near 100 feels like temperature. So very, very warm. Good evening. Good evening, Jay Dickinson. Yeah, this summer's been brutal hot. I mean, the few days that it did cool off, it was still like 90. It just wasn't 100 degrees. The humidity the last week, though, has been worse than it normally has. So that's made it bad. I'd rather have it like closer to 100 and lower humidity. But this week just feels like wet when you go outside. So that's terrible. But it's good beer drinking weather as long as you have something that's light and you're going to have a bunch of them. But good time to also stay inside and watch some movies. So I'm going to clean off this pH meter. We just use that to test our pH of our mash. I got a bucket of sanitizer here. I'm going to throw it in there, and then I'm going to rinse it a little bit with some distilled water before I put it all the way away. That'll help. That'll help keep the little probe thing in here clean and sanitized before we do another test. So put that up for now, and I'll clean that up better a little bit later. We're also going to go through the adding some blackberries. I got a whole bunch of blackberries behind me. We're going to be adding those. I'll wait a few minutes to get that thing going. 107 today. That is warm. Yeah, stay inside and watch YouTube. That's always the best thing to do because throw the thing on the TV. I usually watch a bunch of brewing channels, see what everybody else is up to, watch some of the previous lives, things like that I kind of missed too. So always good to catch up this time of year. Thanks, Tom. You're welcome. I really do like doing these videos, and I was actually on the Happy Hour stream the other night that CH does from Homebrew for Life. He did a little kind of, he had me on the stream and we talked about, how I got started in this, and it really was to help brewers in my homebrew club while we were doing stuff in COVID and putting stuff on YouTube, kind of help people watch stuff online. And then I really kind of liked the whole process of it. So I just kept making videos. And so there I am 2.5 years later and getting into it. So I really like, I'm going to brew the beer anyway. I might as well talk about it, right? Anything people want to see me do on a video? What's one of the things that we always think about stuff to do on videos and one things, but I know what I would like to hear, but other people may have something I'm not even thinking about, like something that no one covers, or they have questions and they're just kind of afraid to ask. I always tell people, comment away on questions that you have, because when I first started, I thought I knew what I was doing, and I'm still learning stuff, to be honest with you. I go over to people's house right now and they got a different system. They got a whole setup, and they do something way different than I did. And I was like, man, I never even thought of that. So it's really awesome to brew with other people if you can, because it just really helps you kind of be a better, more well-rounded brewer, in my opinion. But yeah, it's already hot. I've already almost finished a half of one already myself. So, but we're going to get started in a little bit here, prepping this fruit behind me before this thing starts boiling. And I'll kind of show you what I do. For that, I kind of use a big paint strainer bag. Actually, I'll pull that out so we can start drying out. I use these paint strainer bags for like silicone bags, and I use them for a lot of different things. I'll use them for dry hopping, the smaller 1 gallon size. I'll use them in my hop spider. If you've seen the video, I did a kind of like a DIY hop spider. Actually, it's right here. Looks like this. It's basically a little flange for PVC. It's got these big long carriage bolts bolted on the inside, and then just like have a ring around the base. I have a video on how I made this thing. And then I take one of these kind of 5 gallon paint strainer bags and I put it up through the middle of this thing, if you haven't seen that. And then I push this ring around the outside, and that keeps all my hops while I'm doing my boil. So this thing will sit on the top of my kettle like this, and then it'll have all my hops in there. But these paint strainer bags are awesome for the kettle sours, for putting fruit in specifically. It's big ones. So I'm putting, I think I got 6 pounds of blackberries. And so we're going to be putting those all in a big Rubbermaid bowl. And I'm going to put them in there after I put them in the sanitizer. I tie that shut, and I'm going to put them in the freezer. And I'm not going to really break them up and stuff yet. I'm going to do that the day I put them in the secondary. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm going to put the fruit in here, and then I'm going to wrap them up. I'm going to put them in the freezer. That's going to help kill off any of the bacteria and stuff that might be growing on the blackberries and stuff themselves. So especially if you use fresh stuff, if you use like fresh strawberries or blackberries or something, and you go pick them yourself or pick them up at a farmer's market or whatever, there's going to be stuff on there, and you don't want to just throw those in there. You want to kill them somehow. So I usually dunk them in sanitizer and throw them in the freezer for at least a couple of days. Yeah, freezing the strawberry. So you always do that ahead of time, and I always do that. It does 2 things. Not only does it kill all the bad stuff on there, but it also helps kind of break up the skin on the outside. So some fruits like cherries and other things have like a harder shell or outside of the blackberries or berries that you're using. And so it'll help kind of break those up. And then when you're going to, mash them up, I use a potato masher. I'll show you what I'm talking about. That'll help kind of break those skins open and release all the juices and stuff from the fruit. So I like to freeze them for that reason too, even if I think that they're already like frozen at the store, because some of the stuff that I buy is already frozen. I'll put them in a paint strainer bag like this, let them sit back in the freezer for a little bit, and then take them out and let them thaw in the bag, because then they're already here. So all I have to do is literally open the bag back up, put it on the bowl, mash them up, and then throw them right back into the secondary where I'm going to be putting them in my beer. So, and then I rack right on top of them. So I put those in first. I use a big mouth bubbler, so I have the giant lid on it, about yay big. I have a glass one. I would use glass for kettle sours, by the way. And after you boil the lactobacillus, it's going to kill all that bacteria anyway. But anything you do with a sour, you don't really have to worry about it too much, like in your kegging equipment and things, because it's colder. You're not going to get any like wild off flavor or something like that for putting a new beer in there. But fermenters specifically, because they're going to be sitting at 65, 70 degrees or so, I would use glass. Even if you don't like using glass, I would use glass, because any porous scratches in plastic or stainless steel, you can use stainless steel too. But use that for any souring. Other beers, totally fine to use whatever. You just don't want to get any nasties, or just make sure you clean the crap out of it. I just don't trust plastic buckets like this one. I just use them for sanitizer and other stuff now. I don't brew in them very often anymore. But I did do a Fermonster. I just did a video on that last week, and I've been using that thing, and it's awesome. I do like using that for regular beers. I probably would not put a sour in it, even though the plastic is a little harder and it's a little not as hard to scratch. It does still scratch, so I wouldn't do a sour in it. Almost ready for round 2. So where's everybody from? Anyone from anywhere crazy? It's really cool seeing people comment on my channel and stuff from like all the way across the world, somewhere in Australia and India, place like that. So igloo cooler's okay to cool down hot wort. You can, the igloo cooler will actually keep it hotter longer. So I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. If you're going to do anything, I would just leave it in a kettle and try to cool it that way, putting it in like a bathtub of ice or something like that. I used to live in Minnesota. We used to actually just put it in the snow outside when I first got started. But the faster you can cool them down, the better. I wouldn't probably use igloo coolers unless you absolutely had to, just because it's going to be really hard to, it's going to actually keep the heat more than it will cool it down. Anything that will kind of transfer that heat, like metal, like the kettle will, I would just leave it in the kettle, to be honest with you. Northern Arizona, Portland, Oregon. Hey, it's like all the way across the country from me. I'm down in by the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So it's already it's almost 7:30 here, my time. Austin, Texas. Weird, crazy. I only talk about the traffic and the heat right now. It's crazy hot in Texas right now too. So let's get let's pull up these blackberries here while that thing's heating up. It's already about 160 degrees. That hurricane burner, man, is like the way to go. That natural gas is faster than my regular one, or my propane, not regular, my propane burner. I kind of did a side by side, see how long it would take it to boil the same amount and same temperature of water, and the natural gas did it like almost 10 minutes faster. It's crazy. Maybe not 10 minutes, but more than 5 minutes anyway. Austin is the Portland of Texas. See, you guys will almost live next to each other then. It's pretty close. All right, what should I go for next? I have a ESB that I did, which the recipe is going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. Actually, probably mid next week. I have to wait till after a competition, so nobody knows what I'm doing. But then also I have my hazy. If you haven't done that, if you haven't brewed that hazy in my hazy video, that one got second place in a competition too, and got really good reviews. It's awesome, super good. I use that Verdant yeast from Lollemon, and that stuff is fantastic. First, like dry yeast I've used for a hazy, and it was amazing. It was really good. Definitely would do that one again. And then I got the up down, got the ESB on, and then got the ESB on, and then I've got another beer that I'm fermenting right now, a brown ale actually for this fall. which I'll be posting that video later this month into early September-ish, since it's a kind of a fallish beer, but I'm doing that one ahead of time. So that one will be really good. Central Illinois, just brewed at Golden Ale Clone. Nice. You're welcome, Brian. Happy to help. Again, ask me any questions you got. That's what I'm here for. We're waiting, for those who may have just joined us, we're waiting day 2 of my kettle sour. I'm boiling it again after the souring process, and we're killing all the bacteria that was souring it overnight. And then we're going to boil it for 45 minutes, which is kind of our normal brew day boil, right? We did the first 15 minutes of the boil at the end of the day 1, and then we added this Good Belly probiotics drink that has the Lactobacillus planetarium in it. And now we're killing that off and boiling it for the remaining portion of the hour. So we'll do another 45 minutes or so. So we're just waiting for that to get heated up. It's working on it. It's getting there over 100 and about 170 now. And so we're waiting for that thing to get heated up, and then we'll turn that down. We got to start the timer for 45 minutes, get that thing going today. What's on tap? Okay, so I just went over that, but we'll go over it again. I got one slot available, which I have a brown ale that's almost done, so we're going to be putting that one on there. That video will come out later this month. Not going to tell you what's all in it yet because that's a surprise. I got an ESB that I just tapped about a week ago. That one, the video is going to actually happen on my channel this week, probably Wednesday-ish. And then I still got a little editing and stuff to do with that one. And then I have the Uptown American IPA and the Hazy that I just had on my channel. So both of those videos are posted on my page already. So go check those out. Great. Both of them got second place in competition that I put them in here, and 250 some beers in the competition. And I thought they both had very good reviews. So very awesome. What does everybody else got on tap? I'd like to hear what you guys are drinking, what you're brewing. Any questions you have, let me know. Northwest, you're in luck. We got that ESV for you. I'll give you a little preview of it real quick here once I pull myself one. Ooh, it is good. This glass is kind of hazy or clear. It's not super clear yet. But man, I can see through it. So it's getting there. For those who don't do a lot of ESBs, extra special bitter, basically a British style of a pale ale, a little more malty, a little less bitter. But this one turned out really good. Very good recipe. So check that out when this posts this week, because I'll have the recipe like I always do underneath the video. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, that's actually gotten better in the last week since I tapped it last weekend. So that usually happens too. Like, people are really quick to drink their beers and stuff, but man, if you just let it chill, you can go from I got an okay beer, turned out pretty good. A couple weeks later, it's awesome. That's just how it goes. For some beers, not every beer, but some beers. If you're gonna get off flavors, they're not always gonna clean up. That's why you kind of try and prevent those in the first place. But sometimes it just takes time. Sometimes it's just condition time, and people rush things a little too long. I think as brewers, we all kind of do that. We all kind of rush it. We all want to drink it. We all want to get it in a bottle. We all want to do whatever. And sometimes it's just time. Like, be patient. It will happen. Yeah, this one's got awesome head retention too, so it's really good. Good lacing. Ooh, my whole table just fell into the crack in the garage. Sorry about that. Give you guys like an earthquake. Yeah, slowing down, man. I tell you, it's going to be your friend. You want to slow down when you're brewing, not just the day of course, but it's really the wait time. Everybody hates waiting. Super hard to just let something condition out. And everybody's like, okay, well, it just got to final gravity. I'm gonna go ahead and keg it. And it's like, just give it a couple days. Like, it will do the beer wonders to sit on that for just a couple more days longer than you're hitting your gravity. Unless for some reason you really have to rush something, don't. Absolutely, just homebrew, awesome. It's IPAs in general, pale ales especially, and all beer really. Sitting in a keg longer will help it clear up. It'll help it condition a little bit. It'll drop more of those particulates and particles out of the beer because it's getting colder, and it just takes some time for that stuff to drop out. I think we've all had a beer that was, kind of hazy or cloudy looking, and then wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be, and then a week later, all of a sudden it's like you poured and it looks like crystal clear, like somebody filtered it. Amazing what time does, especially on those colder temperatures. Let's check the heat on this thing real quick. 1 sec. All right, we're getting up to about 200 or so. Let me give it a good stir real quick. So one thing about the kettle sours, when you take, like I said, when you take that saran wrap off the top from letting it either sit overnight in the kettle or in a fermenter like I do sometimes, it's going to smell sour. Sometimes it'll smell like a dirty sock. It's weird, but just roll with it. That's what it's supposed to be like, and you didn't ruin anything. And as you boil it and you heat it up, you'll smell the sourness. It's really good, especially as it heats up. That like kind of dirty sock smell, which I don't pick up that much, but it can a little bit. That goes away because that'll be killed off right away. And then the sourness, though, you'll smell that through the rest of the boil. And that's just because you made a sour beer. So congratulations. So that's awesome. All right, well, let's go through. We'll start putting some of these raspberries, or not raspberries. I made a raspberry sour last time, but I'm going to do blackberries this time. Got a whole bag full of raspberries. We're going to go throw them in a bowl here. I'm going to talk about that process that I do. So we already talked about the paint strainer bag a little bit. I got a 5-gallon paint strainer bag. I use these all the time. Buy them on Amazon, way cheaper, number one, and you can buy a whole crap ton of them for like the same price you buy like 2 at the home, like Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that. So underneath all my videos, especially my kettle sour videos, I have all this stuff posted. So I like put the paint strainer bags underneath there on purpose. I'm actually working on like an Amazon store. So I'm slowly putting some stuff on that too. And that way, if you guys are curious about I'm going to put everything I really actually use day to day on there. So you have like my kettle, my scales, different stuff I use for fermenting and kegging and all that kind of stuff, lizard lamp and my fermenter, Inkbird, all that kind of stuff. That'll all be there. So people want to know like what exactly I bought and use. I'm going to put in there so people want to kind of replicate. I've used them. I can vouch for everything I'm using. And if I think something's better, I'll buy that. But I kind of like that I stick to the basics of brewing where most people kind of start. And then you can go down a rabbit hole of systems and different things. But so first things first about getting ready, doing these fruits. So I get a big bowl like this one. I don't really worry about sanitizing this one as long as it's clean. We're going to be freezing this fruit anyway. I do sanitize the paint strainer bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take this paint strainer bag. There's a little elastic top on them. I'm going to stretch it all the way over the top of this bucket. And then we're just going to dump the blackberries in there. So it's going to look like this. And that way I can just pull back up after I put all these blackberries in there and tie it closed. And again, right now we're not really mashing them up and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to put these things into the paint strainer bag and tie it. And then I'm going to take 2 like grocery store bags like these. I'm going to tie them up one, and then I put another one on there, tie that one up, and then they're going right in the freezer. And that'll help kill off any of that bacteria, break up the skins like we were talking about, all that kind of jazz. So I'm going to open these up, throw them in here right now. Usually I buy fresh these things, but I was kind of late to the game. These things in our area come out kind of early summer, so I just bought a bunch of frozen ones already. But I'm still going to keep them in the same bag. And this helps because the day that I'm going to put these in the secondary, I won't have to do any of this stuff and then kind of retie it and all that kind of stuff. But you can do it the day you're putting them in this, putting them in there anyway. So you don't have to do this ahead of time. I'm just doing it because I have to wait for a pot to boil for 45 minutes. So putting all these guys right in here. Awesome blackberries. Really, really good. So throw those guys in there. And then when I get done and ready to do this, I'm going to let these things thaw out on the counter for a little bit. And then I'm going to use this masher like this. And I'm just going to mash them up as good as I can. And I'm not talking like puree them. I'm just gonna like twist them, break them up, break those skins open. That way, when you put them in the beer, it kind of helps soak out all those different juices and stuff from the blackberries. Put all these in here. Again, I try to do about a pound per gallon. So I'll do 5 to 6 pounds of fruit in each one of my sours. And that gives it a really good like fruity flavor. Again, I don't add any hops for most of my fruited sours. If I do, it's very little, and it'll be very specific to that style that I want to do. I know the Brew Show just posted a sour video, and he did what was it? Oh, key lime pie. That sounded really good. So I don't have a system. I still use the Rubbermaid container, igloo container for mashing, and then I do a batch sparge. So I'll heat up water after I do my initial runnings to 180 degrees, put in my sparge water, and then let that sit for 10 minutes, and then I drain that to get to my full boil. So I'm still kind of old school, and I kind of like it. I mean, I could have bought an all-in-one system. I could have done a bunch of that, but I got my system like nailed down, and I make awesome beer out of it. And so why change? And so it's cheaper, no pumps, less stuff to clean. It's great. But if you buy an all-in-one system, it depends. You got to have room to store all the stuff, and some of them all-in-one systems are better for that. But I kind of like the system that I'm doing just because it helps also having this channel and teaching people that might start that way as well how to do it. And so I think we've all kind of started on one of those systems. Even though when I got started 13 years ago, there wasn't as many like Grain Fathers and Anvil all-in-one systems and Clawhammer, that kind of stuff. That's right. It's kind of my philosophy. It's like, if it works, why mess with it? It's one of those things like, if you make good beer, you make good beer. And some of the best beer I've had has been from, home brewers that do it just like myself in a garage with a cooler. And I've tried some beers from others that have had, huge, expensive thousands of dollars worth of systems, and their beers so-so. Some, obviously do really good beer, of course. I have a lot of friends that have, Clawhammer systems and other things. They brew great beer. So we're getting all these in here. We got about 6 pounds or so, I guess. Somewhere between 5 and 6 pounds. We'll throw all these old bags, and we're going to get this thing tied up, throw it in the freezer. So got all my blackberries here. They're still a little frozen. Look at that. You can see the steam coming off them. It's so hot in my garage. So you can, but these blackberries, they're going to sit frozen just like that. And what I'm going to do is tie this thing up. So I'm going to take that elastic on the top. I'm going to tie this thing right into a knot. And I'm going to not tighten it super tight right now because I'm going to open this thing back up when I mash them up. But again, this is just kind of prepping them to put back in the freezer so I don't have to do it later. All right, so we're going to tie that in a knot, a big old bag of blackberries. Again, when I do which I don't have my fermenter out here, I would have showed you, but I have a big mouth bubbler. And so the mouth on it is probably yay big. And you can kind of finagle that thing, put the whole thing, paint strainer bag and all, into the fermenter, and then rack my beer on top of it. No problem, Just Home Brew. I am brewing a kettle sour. It's just actually getting to a boil. I can start seeing it boil right now. This is actually day 2 of the kettle sour brewing. What I did, first day, I did the actual mash, which is your normal mash. I use, if you watch any of my kettle sour videos, I use the same kind of base recipe, which is 7.5 pounds of white wheat, 5.5 pounds of Pilsner. And then I mash it 154-ish or so. And then for an hour. And then I boil that for 15 minutes to kill off any of the natural bacteria. I cool that down to 100 degrees at only 15 minutes. It just helps kill off any of the bacteria and lower the volume a little bit. And then I'm trying to watch this thing so it doesn't boil over. So bear with me for a second. But I go ahead and I start cooling that thing down to about 100 degrees. And then I add this Good Belly probiotic drink to it. That's going to be what sours it overnight. It's got Lactobacillus plantarum 299V in it. So any kind of probiotic drink you can use. Don't worry about the flavor, but if you can kind of match to what you're doing, this one's pomegranate, blackberry. Well, I'm using blackberries, right? Blackberry sour. So I kind of use that, but the flavor doesn't come out of the good belly. All that flavoring in there will kind of drop out. And then the next day, after this thing sours overnight for 24 hours, you should be, you add a little bit of lactic acid, drop it down to 4.5 pH before you start souring. And over the next 24 hours, it goes from 4.5 to 3.5 pH. And you test that with your pH meter, which we did right at the beginning of this video. You'll be able to rewatch this live too, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. All right, we're getting up to a boil. One second. All right, just had to turn that down just a little bit. Make sure that doesn't boil over. It shouldn't. I added some firm cap. If you don't use firm cap, do it, by the way. I'll show you what that looks like. So firm cap is this stuff here. It helps prevent boilovers during when you first start boiling and when you're adding hops in your boil too. So this stuff is amazing. It also helps after on your day 2 here. Going to help me not boil over now as well. So that'll help kind of break up the bubbles faster on the top, but it doesn't affect head retention. So that's always a good thing. Like people are worried about like, oh, if you're going to affect that, and it actually helps with like Krausen blow off tubes, that kind of stuff as well. But if you're not going to have that, then why doesn't it affect head retention? I can't answer that why, but it doesn't. I have beers that have really good head retention. I use that on every single one of my beers. So, but right before I went over and stirred that thing, I was letting you know I'm boiling this thing for the remaining 45 minutes today. It's going to kill off that natural bacteria. We're not adding any hops in this particular one, but you can. And so you can add, this is where you would add hops, is on your day 2. And I'm going to do my normal boil process for 45 minutes today. We're going to cool it down. I'm pitching US05, Safe Ale US05 yeast, and then letting it do its thing at 67 degrees fermentation temperature. So, and then it'll ferment out. It'll be just a regular sour beer until we add these blackberries, which will be in the secondary in a big mouth bubbler. Totally hose that cold crashing ale, 2 pale and 2 low ABV to be an American IPA. Well, you just have a pale ale now, so too hoppy to be blonde. You know what though? We always worry about the numbers, but if your beer tastes good, it tastes good. I don't care if it's an IPA or a pale ale or a session. I'm gonna drink it if it tastes good, right? So if you got some good flavors of hops in there and still some little bit of alcohol, then you're good. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. I mean, unless you're trying to like enter it into a competition or it has to be straight laced for some competition you're putting them in. Beer is beer. And some of the better beers that I've had don't fall into a specific category, or they wouldn't fit the general rule of a specific beer category. Yeah, it's called Firm Cap S Northwest. It's Firm Cap S. That stuff is amazing. Yeah, that's what you use. Yep. So now that my blackberries are all in this bag, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put them back in the freezer. But what I like to do is I like to take a couple of these shopping bags. Just make sure you didn't use like something nasty for them ahead of time. But then throw them in there. So I put them in 2. I put them in 1 first. Tie that one shut. Then I put really tight. Then I put them in a second one. Tie that one shut. Just so nothing gets in them. Not that anything would in the freezer, but just to kind of makes me feel better anyway. Do that and then put these in the freezer, and then it's going to be a couple weeks. By the time this thing gets done fermenting, sitting in the secondary, it's going to be at least a week before I throw any fruit in there. So I'm going to go ahead and throw these guys right in the freezer, along with all my hops and stuff like that. So I still keep some food in here, and that's the benefit of using an old fridge, because you can still use this for some food, but it's mainly hops and other stuff I got going on in there. And then after, for those who might have missed it the first time we were talking about it, after those blackberries get done, we're going to throw them in our thing. I let them sit on the counter, warm up, and I take this potato masher like this, and break them up. So I just try to get the skins all opened up. I don't need to have them pureed by any means. We just got to make sure that the skins are all open, and it's going to help suck out all the juices out of the blackberries. All right. Who's on beer 2, and what are we drinking? So that thing's been boiling now for about 5 minutes. I just got to keep my timer on it, make sure we got that thing going. Again, for those who are just joining us, we're brewing up kind of day 2 of a kettle sour. Got that thing boiling now. We killed the good belly probiotics in it, and we're letting that thing boil for 45 minutes today. So really got a lot of downtime to answer questions. If people have questions, happy to answer them. We're going to drink some beers and talk about what's new. You take a crack at a mango IPA. Assuming you didn't mean mingo, but mango IPA. That's I had a milkshake IPA that was mango milkshake IPA a couple of months ago. I think one of my buddies brewed that. It was really good. He pureed the mangoes too with a blender. I don't know that you need to do that, depending on what you're putting it in. He has a like an SS brew tank thing where he's not going to put a big paint strainer bag like me in there. But mingo. I don't know what is a mingo. Said I brewed up a Belgian dark strong, 10%. Have to take it slow. Yeah, no kidding. 10% beers will sneak up on you. That's the cool thing about the sours, though, too, because they get up past 7% pretty easy. I've had some closer to 8%, and they don't taste like 8% beers, not with all the fruits and stuff in them, and they're dangerous. I came from a brewery up in Rhode Island, Tilted Barn. Oh, I read that wrong. Just homebrew. I thought you said you were going to take a crack at making a mango IPA, but you're saying you're cracking a mango IPA. I thought you were taking a crack at a brewing one. That sounds good. What's all in that one? Again, for those who popped into this week, I'm going to be posting a ESB extra special bitter. We're going to be doing that video probably Wednesday. We're going to drop that one on Wednesday. And then I'm also have fermenting a brown ale that a couple of friends and I brewed up last weekend. Yeah, last weekend. That's now finishing up, still kind of finishing up the conditioning period. It's done fermenting basically, but it's got to condition for another week or so. And then we'll be kegging that one. That one the video, I'm waiting till it gets a little cooler out, probably right around Labor Day weekend, maybe a little after. We'll drop that video. And in the meantime, we'll do some other funky videos. But also, if people haven't subscribed, go ahead, hit my subscribe button, man. Appreciate every one of you guys. It's helping grow the channel. Like I said, fairly small compared to some of the other brewing channels, but got to start somewhere. So hit that like and subscribe button. Helps out the channel a lot, and appreciate you guys. And if you have ideas for things you want to see in a video, let me know. Happy to do that. I'm always taking suggestions because I hear some comments from people and they'll comment on something. And I'm like, that's a good idea for a video. I kind of have a little list on my phone of stuff I got to try and do, help people out. But sometimes, I kind of forget. I've been doing this for, 13 years and kind of perfected my craft, but I can do videos on stuff that I don't normally do too. I've got friends that have, all-in-one systems. We'll go over there. We'll do a video. So if you guys want to do something cool like that, we'll do like an all-in-one system, like a claw hammer video or a grain father or something else. We'll brew one of those and try it out. But I try and do like a lot of DIY stuff because especially when I first started getting into home brewing, we did a lot of kind of DIY stuff to save some money. I mean, brewing equipment is expensive. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole for sure. It's gotten cheaper, especially for the all-in-one systems. But man, if you can do a mash tun for like $70, which is about what it takes you now, instead of buying one for like 150 or more from one of the online places, it's way cheaper. So putting videos like that, the hop spider, I did a recirculation tool video. It all helps. It's all way a fraction of the cost that you buy stuff at the store. So the Mingo IPA, one of their core IPAs, 6.8 balanced malt, pretty good. I like a good IPA. I'm one that likes them a little more bitter, so I like those. I guess you call them like Pacific Northwest IPAs, not really true West Coast IPA. like the Pacific Northwest are a little more bitter, maybe a little less malty sometimes. I think the more recent Pacific Northwest ones are a little less malty. Some of the ones that historically have come from Pacific Northwest have been a little more malty. But I'm trying to think of what is Elysian up there. They got a good IPA. That one's very, very bitter compared to like a typical West Coast IPA. There's a Portland guy on here. Where are you at? That's what's your favorite Pacific Northwest beer? Speaking of beer, I need to get another one. Let me know what you guys are drinking. What are you on? Or what do you like to drink anyway? Whew. That one almost spilled over on me. The foam from the last one on there. This is the hazy IPA at New England. That's a good one, man. If you haven't brewed this one, gigantic. I had that conversation with CH from Homebrew for Life the day when I was on the stream. We were talking about breweries and what makes a good brewery versus a bad brewery, and you can have awesome beer and still be a shitty brewery, depending on what the atmosphere is like. But you could have, crap beer and people will go to it because it's kids and dog friendly and that kind of stuff. But I think to make a brewery or even at least one that you can go visit really, really good, you got to have at least so beer and an awesome environment. Most of the fun places I go, the beers are usually a little bit of both, right? So you got to have great beer or at least good beer, and then you got to have a good atmosphere. If you're lacking one of those two, people are just going to find a different place to go. Yeah, Jay Dickinson, that's the same thing. I actually, he said you have a neighbor who runs a local brewery. He said don't worry about the BJCP guidelines. And you know what? Funny story. One of the first beers that actually put into a BJCP competition was a porter, and it was a chocolate toasted coconut porter. So I mean, amazing. Had great chocolate flavor, more chocolate than you would want because I was going for like this kind of like Mounds bar, like coconuts and whatever. Toasted the coconuts in the oven. They're freaking great. That beer was so good. And the comments I got back, I didn't meddle in that or anything. I got the comments back, and the comments were, stuff like, this beer is too sweet for the style guidelines and stuff like that. And it's like, what? No way. Style guidelines, whatever. That thing was fantastic. You guys are crazy. Yeah, this hazy, you guys. This is the one on my recipe with the verdant yeast. Woo. This is it. You need to brew this one right here. This is fantastic. And that again, that verdant yeast is a dry yeast. First time I've ever used it. I usually use like a London Fog or others that are more well known for hazy IPAs, and they're good. I mean, don't never use London Fog again. But I'm saying this yeast, you don't have to make a starter. Dump that thing in there just after I rehydrate it. Fantastic yeast for hazy IPA. So yes, I'm not ashamed that I love hazy IPAs too. So I'll have those things on my tap year round. I don't do as many in the wintertime because I'll do porters and other stuff that are more seasonal, but that's a good beer. Yeah. Gnome sent you his toasted coconut porter aged in a rum barrel. Whew. I bet you that did mess you up. I bet that has to have been over a 10% beer, at least 9 anyway. Those things, the toasted coconut in a porter is amazing. If you guys haven't done that, fantastic. I think I did a video on it. I kind of even forgot. I might have done that a couple years ago, but the toasted coconut is the way to go. So one thing you got to do, though, if you toast coconut, you just brown it, right? You want it to be like tan, but put it in the oven. I think it's at 350 degrees. Throw that guy in there, right? And then you have all of your coconut on like parchment paper, and you just level it out really, really even. And then you have to open it up and like toss it around every once in a while, stir it up so you're not burning it because you don't want to burn it at all. And then when it's all done, take that coconut out and pat it dry with a bunch of paper towels, flip it, pat it dry with a bunch of paper towels. Because the coconut, just like when you use nuts, those oils and stuff will affect the head retention of your beer. So you want to make sure you get as much of the oils off of that stuff. But man, the flavors from the toasted coconut are like none other, man. It's so good. So do that if you haven't done that. Maybe we'll do another one of those this winter and put a video up again of that. That's a good idea. The brew day is going well. Still watching a pot boil over here. So that is, there's nothing fancy you're missing out on because it's just a boiling pot of wort. But again, for those who may have just joined us, we're doing a kettle sour today, second day. I did the first day where we did a typical mash, added lactic acid, drop it down, added the Good Belly probiotic drink, Lactobacillus planetarium in here. We soured it overnight, dropped to a 3.5 pH, and now we're heating it back up. It killed off the bad bacteria, or the souring bacteria, and now we're doing our normal boil process, right? So then we'll go ahead and do that and boil for 45 minutes. This is where you would add any hops. I'm not adding any of this because we're going to add 6 pounds of blackberries that I just put in the freezer. So watch this one again. We'll have this live video up, so watch it again if you want to hear about it. Coconut oil will kill yeast as well. So I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but yes, but I add the toasted coconut and my secondary. So it would be after fermentation. So don't put that in your mash or anything. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but yes, you add the toasted coconut in the secondary. I put it in one of those paint strainer bags like I did earlier for the blackberries, and I put that in there. I usually, because coconut also floats, and so I always add a couple of them like sous vide magnets, or maybe even something heavier than that, stainless steel or marbles. Other people do a bunch of stuff, but I just take a couple of the sous vide magnets and I put it on the bottom and I pull the thing down from the side and get it all the way in, so it's not just sitting on the top. But you can have it sit on the top too. It'll get most of that coconut flavor out. Try to dunk it in there a little bit. Yeah, that's a great addition to a porter. If you guys are looking for something to mess around with, add a little bit more chocolate malt than you would, and those toasted coconuts, like a pound of those things. Whew, that's a good beer. That's a great beer. I've never had anyone complain about that beer, but I didn't get a good score, like I said, on the BJCP because it's not to style, but it's fantastic. I'd rather have a beer on tap in my garage that my friends come over and they're like, "Hey, I had your beer, fantastic, awesome," and they're gonna drink the crap out of it rather than get a good score and a medal on the wall. I could care less what those guys think about how it relates to the BJCP stuff if all my friends and I like it. I mean, you're gonna drink it, right? So you might as well brew what you like to brew, even if it's not to 100% to one style or another. That's always a good rule of thumb too. Like, brew what you like to drink. I mean, you're the one's gonna be stuck with it. So people always ask like, "Oh, do you brew like different weird styles sometimes?" And yes and no. I like to try different styles, but if it's not one that I'm gonna love drinking, 5+ gallons of, I'm just gonna buy some at the store because I gotta drink 5 gallons of it, or my friends do, and they're gonna drink the stuff that they would normally get also at like a brewery. So they're gonna go for the IPAs and the pale ales and the porters and the hazy IPAs, that kind of stuff, and I'm gonna get stuck with the other stuff if I brewed it that they wouldn't normally get. That's right. He said, "Don't submit them to a BJCP competition. Submit them to your friends and family, and they'll give you the praise." Because that is 100% true. And you can always tell when people like your beer too, or don't like it, because they'll taste it and they'll be like, "It's pretty good." But people will be like, try a sip and they'll be like, "Oh, dude, this is great," And they wouldn't have to say that. If it was bad, they would be like, "Oh yeah, it's good." But yeah, happy that I've helped perfect the craft for some of you folks too. I am by no means the world's best brewer, but learned just from doing and learned even while doing this channel, believe it or not. I mean, I've changed stuff since my first brew day video that I do way differently now than I used to. And I talked about that at the beginning of the stream a little bit, was like going to friends' house and seeing their processes, their different equipment and stuff will just make you a better brewer, because they're gonna do things you didn't even think of, and then you're gonna incorporate that in your brew day. Yeah, that's right. If they finish the glass and are going back for more, that's a good sign they like it, right? I mean, especially if they grab the same kind. That's one of the things too. It's like you could be like, "Oh, try this beer," and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's good." And then when they go back to your kegerator, if you're like me and you got 4 taps on, they're gonna be like, "What else you got?" But if they like that one, they're like, "I'm gonna have another one of those. Those are great." All right, I'm gonna give the pot another stir. What's everybody drinking? Again, if you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, do that. It helps me out a lot. Appreciate all you guys. I will answer your question, Chad, in just a second. I'm going to do a little quick stir around in this pot. Chad, you asked, do you have an opinion on how to adjust priming sugar when adding fruit to the secondary and bottle conditioning? So that's a good question. And I'm glad you brought that up, because we're doing the kettle sour, we're adding the blackberries, and I keg, right? So that's going to keep that from fermenting and getting bottle bombs when you're kegging. But if you are putting it in a bottle, it's different, because some of those warmer temperatures and you're adding a little bit of sugar, you're going to have some residual sugar probably from that juice. You won't have a ton, but you'll have some. And you may create some bottle bombs where you're getting the caps busting off them and that kind of stuff. You can, there's 2 different products. Camden tablets, like you use for getting rid of like chlorine in your water, they can be used temporarily, but they just kill everything in there right away. But in a pinch, you can use one of those. They can kill the yeast or any yeast or bacteria in there for up to 10 gallons. I think one of the little tablets are the Camden tablets. But there's also and I can't remember the name of it. Sorbic acid or something like that. It's one they use in wine to do the same thing. So there's a ingredient, and then it's escaping me right now if somebody knows what it is. But there's a ingredient you can put in the entire batch before you bottle. You would put it in there to kill any of the yeast before you bottle. And I would do that when you put it in your bottling bucket along with your corn sugar, because it's just going to keep kill the yeast in there. But I guess you would need a little bit of the yeast to do for eating the corn sugar. Man, I guess I would have to ask somebody about that. I don't bottle that stuff anymore, and I never did it. But I'm trying to think out loud. But the ascorbic acid, I think, would allow it to ferment a little bit, but it just would kill most of it. But if anybody knows an answer to that, go ahead. But you could I know that the ascorbic acid stuff kills that. That's what they do for wine, but they don't carb up wine either. So I'd have to look into that. I know that I've talked to somebody about doing that when they went from bottling, or they wanted to put some in a bottle after they've kegged it. But at that point, especially after you've had it in a keg for a little while, once it's cold, you're not going to pull a lot of that the yeast in there anyway. My guess is you probably wouldn't have that many bottle bombs anyway. Once you got it off the yeast cake, there's just very, very little, so it's not going to ferment enough to get that much. Maybe you could just cut back on some of the priming sugar a little bit. So Das Me just turned in. Question was, when you're making a sour, is there issues with the equipment for making lagers afterwards and using an igloo cooler and plastic fermenters? And then will it be tainted? So a couple things. Wild bacteria that you use, if you're just doing a mixed fermentation type of stuff, like a lot of people will make a beer, they'll introduce some yeast or bacteria, bacteria from like other grains, or they'll leave it in a closet for a couple weeks and get those kind of mixed bacteria from that and just let it kind of sour naturally, or put it in even a barrel, right? So This style, when you're using the good belly, is a little less. It's basically creating lactic acid as part of the byproduct of the bacteria in here. And so this one uses Lactobacillus plantarum 299V. That stuff is less likely to contaminate all your stuff. Now, with that said, you do want to clean that stuff right away. And I would really, I would do two things. So do the kettle sour because they're awesome and you'll love it. But keep the first day when you're doing the souring, keep it in your kettle. And so if you have a stainless steel kettle, keep it in there. Use some plastic wrap, spray it with sanitizer on the top, put it over the top, let that sit for 24 hours. Then you're not putting it in a bucket or anything. Once you boil it on day 2, so after you come back and you do the full brew day process, you check it, it's 3.5 pH or less or something. You're boiling it. After that hits 150, 170 degrees, you're killing all that bacteria that you're souring with anyway. And so when you transfer that, it's going to be sour, but it's not going to have any of those wild bacteria, so you're not going to have to worry about your equipment. So one of the things that people ask me all the time is like, well, you have one in your fridge and then you put a different beer on it. Does it affect that beer? No, it doesn't. So that's going to be just fine to do that. You're going to kill all that stuff off, and you're just going to have your regular yeast that you're going to be brewing with. In this case, after I get done with this one, I'm going to be using USO5. So I'm going to do Safe Ale USO5, and that's just going to be fine. So the equipment is only necessary to be, and you can only really taint something that you're souring in. So if you're going to put it in a bucket and sour it in that, I would use that bucket for anything else. But if you're going to do it in the kettle itself, you'll be just fine. Does that answer any questions? I wouldn't use any transferring equipment or anything like that after you put the good belly in there. Leave it in there. Dump it in if you're going to put it in a fermenter. Don't use any transferring hoses, anything like that. And then, or keep it in your kettle. Yeah, so I haven't really thought too much about putting it in bottles, but I should check that out and answer that in the next kettle sour video I did, because Chad, that's a good idea. Putting this stuff in, it's still going to have some residual sugars, but I just don't know that you're going to have enough to get, bottle bombs with too much or overcarbed, to the point where they're going to explode anyway. Yeah, and you might get some more head. You might try and back off of the corn sugar a little bit, instead of doing, what is it? I don't remember how many ounces of corn sugar it is you mix in for 5 gallons. I think it's like 5 or cup or something like that. I can't remember what it is, 8 ounces or something. If somebody knows that, let me know too. But then when you mix that stuff up, maybe back off a couple of ounces. See how that does it. Because you are going to have some sugars in there the yeast will eat up anyway. I just don't know that there's enough yeast to really get it crazy, if you know what I mean. Yeah, you're welcome, guys. Any other questions? You guys have questions about stuff that's unsour related too? Happy to answer them. We're doing a kettle sour for people who might have just jumped on. Second day of that, we're boiling that. Let me see how much time I got left here. It's been in for like half an hour. So never had a kettle sour. What sour would you recommend to try and get a good sense of the beer? There's a lot of sour beers that you can buy over the counter. I would go and find a kettle sour at a brewery first, like a local brewery if you have one, to see if you like it. You can make, the good thing about kettle souring is you can make it as sour or as little sour as you want. And the souring process is really up to you. So I leave it for 24 hours and it drops from 4.5 pH to 3.5 or under. The lower that pH goes, the more sour it's going to be. So some people think of sours, they think of like, I think, who is it? The Brew Show put out a video and he's like, everybody thinks of like Warheads, right? They're like, oh my God, it's so sour, I can't drink it. And some of the mixed fermentation sours are actually like that. I don't like them that sour. I like them more tart and still drinkable. And with some, when I add some fruit and stuff in there, it kind of like balances that stuff out. So what I would do, I have a great recipe on all of my kettle sour videos. I put the recipes underneath the videos like I do for all my beers. Go check out my video. I do 7.5 pounds of white wheat, 5.5 pounds of Pilsner. I use USO5, Safe Ale USO5 for the yeast. And so then you just, really the only thing you need to change is what you're putting it in there, if anything, for the secondary or hops. I don't add any hops when I'm adding fruit. And most of the time I do about 1 pound per gallon of of fruit in the secondary. And so I've done everything from mango to pineapples to all different kinds of stuff. We've done raspberries, cherries, uh, blackberries, of course, what we're doing today, and a whole bunch. So, and they all kind of taste different. But the cool thing is the white wheat in there makes it a little cloudy, kind of makes it feel a little bit more like a juicy, hazy, kind of like this appearance, kind of, because this is what the beer will look like, sort of, if you, don't add the fruit. So, man, you can also always do like a half a brew. If you don't want to do a full 5 gallons, see what it's like. Do half of one. Add half of one of these good bellies in there instead of the full one, and try it out. But man, good beer. I was kind of like one of these sours were kind of hit or miss. But once I had a good sour, and then I kind of perfected the recipe on the sours, like I keep one on tap all the time. I said at the beginning of the stream, my wife's not a huge beer drinker, so me having a sour on tap is my way of saying I get 3 taps and you get 1, and then I steal one of her beers every once in a while. So she loves the sour, so I always keep one on tap for her. She's not a big beer drinker, though. I should rephrase that. She's not a bitter, hoppy beer drinker, and probably would choose a sour or a hard cider or something like that over any style of beer other than a sour. Even though I brew a ton of different styles, and she tries them sometimes, she gives the same face after everyone. It's not her thing. She's a wine drinker, too. She likes wine, so that's okay because it leaves more for me and the friends, so... All right, we are at 31 minutes of my boil. I'm going to have to start cooling this thing down here just in a minute. So give me half a second to go make sure my wort chiller's hooked up and get the water turned on anyway, so I can start cooling this thing down in a few minutes. But let me know any other questions that you have, beers that you're drinking, and then hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Share the page, help a brother out. Appreciate each one of you guys. I'll be right back. I'm just going to check the... make sure my water's on and all that stuff. I'll be right back. All right. All right, what's good? I got the water all turned on. We're getting ready to cool this thing down in about 5 minutes or so. Maybe give it a couple extra minutes. Got a nice good boil going on. I'm going to sanitize my wort chiller real quick. All right. Cheers, everybody. What's everybody drinking? We're getting ready to finish up the kettle sour. Again, second day of kettle sour brew day. Takes a 2-day process to do a kettle sour. When you're souring it overnight, like I am, using the Good Belly probiotic stuff. Again, I'm showing this only because people need to kind of know what it looks like, but you can also just drink that stuff. It's good. Banquet beers. ever used pure cane sugar to add at boiling time? I have not. Um, Fermenting says 1 to 2 weeks. So to carb up, is that what you mean, Tom? Or are you saying for fermenting for the yeast? I don't know that I've ever had anything go 2 weeks when it wasn't a lager. Lagers sometimes take two, or something that you're fermenting really cold will take up, a little bit longer, obviously. Oh man, use sugar. You dump 10 gallons a day. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever added sugar. The only thing I have added was stuff that has sugar in it. I added stuff that like maple syrup or fruits or something like that, and you have to account for that in fermentation because it has obviously will ferment because of sugars. So I haven't used pure cane sugar during the boil or anything like that. What do you look for before bottling? I mean, really, fermenting should just be the fermentation activity, right? And then I use a tilt hydrometer, but in reality, even those can be a little off. Really, the only way to know that fermentation is done is to test it with a regular hydrometer. I mean, once alcohol is present, you can't use the refractometer. You could grab a little bit, put it on a refractometer, and there's some calculators online that will give you kind of what the Brix reading or the gravity reading would be, just kind of based on the alcohol present calculation. So you could do that. That's another option for you, but really you have to test it. And then I would let it be at that final gravity for several days before you start bottling, just to let it condition. Conditioning is the biggest thing, especially with bottling. You're going to bottle condition anyway while it's carbon up and stuff. But I've had beers that were like so, and then ended up being absolutely fantastic because I let them sit in the I put them in a closet under the stairs for like a month and forgot about them. And then I opened them up and I'm like, man, this wasn't good at all. Now it's fantastic. This is a great beer. I've had salt in the boil, not sugar. So Belgian candy sugar. I've had people do candy sugar. I haven't seen that before. Yes, final gravity doesn't mean it's ready to bottle. No, all beer has some conditioning, some more than others, that needs to kind of happen to kind of round off those flavors and stuff, right? Just because it's done doesn't mean it can't. There's other things going on besides sugar conversion to alcohol, right? So let it rest, let it sit, man. Let it go. A couple weeks is not going to kill you. You can buy some store-bought beer for a week. All right, we're close to cooling this thing down. I'll show you guys cooling it down, even though it's nothing crazy. But I use an immersion chiller still. I hook that thing up. I'll put the pot on the ground. I use the immersion chiller to kind of move it around a little bit, make sure it's cooling down. This time of year, it's really hard to get it anywhere close to pitching temperature. So I've got my fermentation thing right now sitting at 9 degrees on purpose because I'm going to put my fermenter. Once I get done transferring this thing, it'll probably still be close to 90, and I'm going to put that thing in the fermentation chamber for a couple of hours. Let that thing cool down to close to pitching temperature before I pitch the yeast. It's this time of year is really hard to get down without using ice or something else to pitching temps. Yeah, you boil the sugar to dissolve it, Tom, a little bit before you bottle, and then you add it to the bucket so it can get really mixed in. That's for carbonation. Yeah, I think what he's asking for earlier was putting it in the boil. Is that right? Maybe I misunderstood. All right, we're about 1 minute away. Let me see where we're at volume wise. Yeah, I'm gonna actually let this boil a few minutes longer just because I've got a little extra volume, and I was just under my when I did my what I kind of call starting gravity, and then original gravity would be today. But my original starting gravity after I got to full volume was a little low. So I'm going to boil just a little bit longer, make sure that it gets down to my original gravity, expected original gravity, I think is somewhere around 1060. Let me just double check. I'm going to grab my recipe book real quick. One second. All right, original gravity 1062. So we'll see how close we get on this one. I was my pre-boil gravity was supposed to be 1.048. It was 1.043. So it's a little low, not bad, a little low on that. So I'm boiling just a few minutes early, or a few minutes longer, excuse me, just to make sure that I get down to that 1062. And if I don't care if I'm at 1058 or 1059 or whatever it is. That's going to be just fine. But keep notes. That's one thing about brewing. Keep notes. You can always look at what you did and be like, man, you know that beer I did? It was fantastic. And you look back and you're like, oh, man, I thought it was going to be terrible because I missed my final gravity and did X, Y, Z. And you're like, you know what? Maybe I'll just do that next time because it's awesome. Never eat anything with rants and then drink banquet. It's like brushing your teeth and having orange juice, right? Nasty. Yeah, pre-chiller. That's a good idea. I know a lot of people this time of year will use like a different cooler full of ice water, put a different immersion chiller in that, and then run that water through to get it colder and then get it in there and kind of recirculate that. So whatever you need to do to get it down to pitching temperature, I just say, because I'm going to be putting it in this fermentation chamber anyway, it's going to do its job chilling it down, that I'm just going to get it most of the way there and let the freezer do its work. But yeah, take notes. We're a couple minutes over. I'm probably going to let it boil for an extra 5 minutes here because I'm not in hop, so it really doesn't change anything. So I got about 3 minutes and we'll start cooling this thing down. But for those in here, appreciate all you guys. Again, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't. We've been on here for almost an hour and a half. It seems like it's going pretty fast. So we're doing a brew day kettle sour, Blackberry kettle sour. I did the blackberries. I put them in the freezer already. You can check out this live afterwards, kind of see how I did everything. This beer is the second day after we soured it. We're going to go ahead. We're going to be cooling this thing down and then fermenting like normal. The second day after the souring process kills all that bad bacteria, and you're just doing like what would be a normal brew day, but kind of a shortened brew day because you're only doing, what is it, 45 minutes of a boil or so. And so you don't have to do all the mash. You don't have to do all that. It's kind of like doing almost like an extract day. But fill it up while I have my extra last couple of minutes here. Take a couple swigs before we get off onto the cooling. Again, any questions, comments? Doesn't have to be about kettle sours. It can be anything. You can talk about whatever you want. If you have questions, let me know. Also, after this, if it's post live and you have questions, you can put them in the comments below. Happy to hear from you. Love answering questions from people. That's how I got started. And learning is doing, and learning is hearing it from everybody else. So this is what the channel's all about. That's right, Tom. Learning the lingo. Sunday nights, that's what they're for, right? Sitting at home, having a beer, watching some guy watch another pot. So it's about all we've been doing for 45 minutes is drinking and watch a pot boil. But that's basically brewing, isn't it? So grab another, I think I'm doing another hazy. Oh, man, I had a lot of foam in the last one. Didn't tilt my glass quite enough. I think that's a little too much head, don't you think? But pot's almost done here. I'm gonna turn this, so you guys can see me cooling this thing down here in just another minute, and then we will check it out. What's up, Gnome? Cheers. We're on day 2 of a kettle sour, so we're just answering some questions while I'm watching a pot boil for 45 minutes. And just hanging out. What's new? What are you drinking? I'm a multitasker, just homebrew. Drinking, brewing, hosting a stream. I like to talk. I don't know if you guys figured that out yet. So, yeah, that's right. Watch you getting me a good buzz. Hey, just join a happy hour on Wednesday nights. You'll see everybody get a good buzz. Yeah, that's why you got to use the firm cap, just homebrewing. That'll help you with your your boil over, so you don't have to watch it as closely. But I did boil this for 15 minutes, so I got most of that out yesterday. But all right, guys, we're gonna start chilling this thing down. But keep asking the questions. Tell me what you're drinking. I'll turn the camera here so you guys can see what's going on. Got the pot going on. We're gonna get this thing turned down. Get the water going here and start cooling her down. Whoop, gotta turn on the water. Really, it's not. Wouldn't you know, my hose actually like broke off of like the spigot thing and was like not working, so I had to grab the different one. All right, guys, so we're cooling this thing down. Wouldn't you know it, my hose broke away from like I had a little like connection thing, and it the hose actually like tore next to the house, so I have to replace that. But I had to grab the one out of the backyard quick so I could cool my beer down. But it always is going to happen on a live, right? Like it couldn't have happened just like me here by myself. But I'm going to go ahead and keep rocking this thing back and forth again. It's going to take a while to cool down. It's probably not going to get to fermentation temperature tonight because it is hot outside. So what I'm going to do is try to get this as cool as I can, and then we're going to put it in the fermentation chamber to do the rest of this thing. Again, we're pitching safe ale USO5 in this thing, so I'll probably rehydrate and pitch that thing about maybe mid 70s ish, and then let it get down to 67 fermentation temperature. So rocking that chiller back and forth will help move around that wort a little bit too, and cool it down a lot faster. So if you're really trying to rush a brew day, you can do that by just kind of rocking that back and forth a little bit. Let me see if I got any kind of new comments here. Hey, welcome, Todd. Good to see you. Yeah, you just made it. We're down to the cooling area. We're going to have this thing posted again after I get done brewing everything, but we're just cooling it down. Did the second day of a kettle sour. So this thing should be ready to pitch and start fermenting, and then we're going to add 6 pounds of blackberries in the secondary, so that should be awesome. Down south, the temps 100 degrees. Playing around using Kveik yeast, 85 fermenting indoors, ambient temperatures, amazing stuff. Yes, Kveik. If you do not have a fermentation chamber this time of year, Kveik is the way to go. If not, invest in like what I got is a chest freezer. Like I said, it's hot. It's still like 90 degrees and like almost 100 degrees. I'm like sweating sitting here in my garage. I got a little fan going. But do that. You need a fermentation chamber to get that thing down to where it needs to be, or use Kveik. Kveik loves it at like 100 plus. Sometimes room temperature in your summertime might not be enough. And I've had people who had to put that thing in like a hot bathtub to get it going again. So Kveik's the way to go. Kveik's one of those yeast too that like you're having more and more strains come out. Some of them like way more fruity esters and stuff like that. That's really good for like even hazy IPAs, and they're very fast fermenting yeast. So really, really cool to see how many Kveik yeasts are coming out. Not one of my favorite yeasts that I use all the time, but like in a pinch, man, if you need to do a beer in like a week, like Kveik is the way to go. You can kick out a beer pretty fast. So, but definitely, you know, if you're going to do any type of lagering or anything like that, or even a full lager, there's even some Kveik yeast that can kind of do that. What is it, Lutra? If you ferment at like normal temperatures, even Lutra will give more of like a lagery taste. But yeah, we're going to keep cooling this thing down. Try to get it as cool as we can anyway. We're only at like 120. It's so hot out. That monster wort chiller in the wintertime will cool that beer in 15 minutes, like right down to like 60, mid 60s. But this time of year, when it is 100 degrees outside, the water going through there is still like in the 80s. And so it's crazy. It's like, well, at least 70s anyway. So it's just not going to cool down. And so we're going to have to put it in there, or use Kveik like somebody else does. Yeah, if you got 50-degree groundwater, you're good for you. In the South, Brown Charlotte area, they don't bury the water lines that far. We don't have to worry about frozen ground here. So when I was living in Minnesota, it still was probably 50 coming out of the groundwater because they have to bury them deep enough to not freeze. Yeah, no. There's no doubt that you will have snow and ice concerns. You live in the northern states for sure. I used to be. I'm originally from Rochester, Minnesota, so southeast, but I used to work and live in the Twin Cities area, um, Bloomington specifically, before I moved down here, just south of Minneapolis airport. Yeah, small batches are kind of a way to go when you can do cooling from ice and stuff this time of year too. Because 3 gallons. Oh, you're saying 3 gallons of ice? Okay, and pump it into a pond pump. Yeah, yeah. You can do that too. I have a lot of people who do that through. They use a pump and recirculate it from another wort chiller that's in a cooler full of ice water. That's also a way to go. Cools the water down first, gets it in there, then recirculates it back, either with a pump or even with the garden hose. But using ice water is like the only other way to really cool it without a fermentation chamber. Abbott Northwestern. Okay, yeah, I know where that's at. Land of 10,000 lakes up in Minnesota. You can have your pickup lakes. We're almost at 100. All right, so I'm gonna grab a fermenter real quick. I'm gonna use that big mouth bubbler. Got that all sanitized. I'm gonna grab that real quick. So when this thing gets a little cooler, anyway, I can transfer that in there. I'll be right back. I thought it would get like a little cooler outside by now, and it is not at all. It's so hot still. Turn that up so I can see what everybody's doing here. Yes, fishing is awesome in Minnesota. I will tell you that. We do not have walleye down here, and we have a lot of walleye up in Minnesota. My dad used to fish for walleye. Now I do a lot of bass fishing, but that's what you got to do when you move south because there's no walleye in the lake unless you go up to the mountains. It's too hot. Even the lake right now, like I was out on the lake the other day, and water temps were about 90 degrees. Crazy. Minnesota's beautiful in summer, but if you like winter, it's also the place to be. I did not like 8, 9 months of snow, and so my wife and I decided to move south about 8 years ago. And I go back and visit when it's nice out, or I have an excuse for my friends and family to come down when it's not. Dude, ice fishing. I've had my share of ice fishing and snowmobiling and all that kind of stuff, but the only thing there is to do ice fishing is sit around and drink beer, which is not a bad thing to do, but you're also just huddled around with like 8 other guys in like a shack. So, oh yeah, no, we were in the ice houses. Trust me, like I'm not going out and sitting around the outside hole unless it's nice outside, not in 20 below zero. Anybody else having a beer? Anybody else brewing anything this week? Let me know. What are you drinking? What are you brewing? What do you like to drink? All right, we're about 98 degrees. Probably take another 5 minutes to get it down to 95 or so, and then we'll probably start dumping it into the fermenter. It'll cool as we start transferring it to a little bit more, and then let the fermentation chamber do the rest. Got a mango peach goza in the fermenter now. Awesome. Cream ale waiting on for you when you get home. That's good. Gotta have something when you get home. Hey, Just Brewing, check out the hazy video I just did. It's a great recipe. I think Homebrew for Life just did one too. Both probably very good recipes. My hazy that I'm drinking now, oh man, so good. This thing with the Vernet yeast is banging. You could do the same recipe though and just use like London Fog or something too. This is how we chill, right? Just let it do its own thing, and I'm chilling. Well, actually, I'm not chilling. It's like 95 degrees outside, but I'm trying to keep chill. Almost there. And by almost there, I say it almost 90. That's about as good as we're going to do in like mid-August in the Carolinas. It is hot. Yeah, so for those new to the, or not new to the channel, if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button, by the way. If you're not new to the channel, or if you're new to the channel, for those who are new to the feed tonight, I'm going to be releasing a couple of videos. I brewed a brown ale that I'm going to release at the end of the month or early September-ish. It's a brown ale for kind of a fall beer. It's really, really good. And then I did an ESB that I'll be releasing on Wednesday. I have a meeting on Tuesday that's doing a competition, so I don't want to give away the secrets on that beer that soon. But wait for Wednesday. The ESB video coming out is a very good beer too. I had one of those tonight on the stream, so check out those coming up here. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't, you guys. Appreciate everybody supporting the channel. Like I said, I'm just getting off the feed as the channel is concerned, but trying to do my best to help you guys out and help myself out be better brewers, because doing is learning. All right, I think we're gonna at least stop the chiller. We're gonna get this thing racked in my fermenter quick. I use this is the old school version of the Big Mouth Bubbler. This is what I use when I'm doing sour specifically, so I can put all those fruits in here. I have this thing just saran wrap around it. It's all sanitized. I use glass especially for sours, just because I don't want anything porous and stuff after I do that. But again, after you're boiling it and killing it, it's probably not all that bad. You could use a bucket if you had to. But we're going to go ahead and transfer this thing quick. I got my hose and all that stuff in the sanitizer. We're going to transfer this real quick. So again, let me know what you guys are drinking, what you're brewing, and what's new. All right, guys, for people who haven't watched my video, I use this like strainer thing when I'm transferring into my carboy on purpose, because it helps aerate the beer as it's going through there. And if you have hops, which I didn't have this one, it'll kind of catch all those things too. So I use that, just run it right through there, kind of hold it above it. Helps give the beer a lot of aeration, which is needed for the yeast. So we'll just go ahead and fill this fermenter up. It'll catch anything that might have got in your pot too. I actually had a fly go in there one time. Didn't run the beer. It was a great beer. A little extra protein on that beer. But yeah, it helps for aeration more than anything. And then when we pinch the yeast, it'll be nice and aerated. As long as I don't have to like wait 2 hours for this thing to cool down. And this light's giving me off a nice little glare here. Sorry. Yeah, so anybody who's new, we're doing a kettle sour, second day of the kettle sour. So it is, you can smell the sourness the day after you do this. It's 24 hours later or so. So you'll be able to smell the sourness on this thing as soon as you open it up. But it is good. Use this, find a good recipe and just use it over and over. That's what I do. And then just change the different like stuff you put in the secondary. Favorite style and best brew to date? I kind of go in waves with styles and stuff, but if it were me going to like a brewery, the first beer I'm getting isn't going to be like a specialty beer of theirs. If they can do the standard beers, like, you know, your IPAs, your pale ales, your, you know, what have you, that type of beer, then the rest of their beers are usually going to be pretty good. And so for me personally, I'm an IPA guy. I like IPAs, whether they're hazy IPAs, but specifically I like just regular West Coast IPAs. Those will be like the first ones I kind of grab off the shelf. And I know it's kind of cliche, but I do. I still like them. Some people are like, you know, they really like a good Pilsner, and I do too. But it's just not my go-to first thing I grab. And some people are really into like, you know, Czech Pilsners and other things, which are great. And they're awesome go-to beers to have. And I'm not knocking that. I just, if I'm going to go and pick stuff out at the store, it's going to be American IPA. It's going to be a pale ale. I'm going to go for a porter in the wintertime, brown ales. I like a Bock beer. So if I had to pick some out in the store and I'm just like shopping, sometimes it depends on the season because I love Oktoberfest too, by the way. So Oktoberfest coming up. I always do an Oktoberfest video. I don't know if I'll do one this year. I did the last 2 years, so I have a couple on my channel already. I'll probably do something else. I have brown ale. I'll probably do that coconut porter again for sure. I think it was awesome. All right, so here's what we got. Believe it or not, we have a beer. So we got my fermentation chamber here. I got a big mouth bubbler lid. I'm going to grab a airlock real quick. Throw this guy on here. I have one in here. I think I have an airlock in here. And then I'm not going to put this thing super, super tight on here, the airlock and stuff, after I sanitize it, because it'll be cooling down yet, and so it'll suck back in. So I'll just kind of leave it a little bit. And right now, air on the beer isn't a big thing. You just don't want a lot of nasties getting on it. Where did I put all my airlocks? Oh, I got one right here. All right, get that thing's all sanitized quick here. Put this thing on here. Again, I got Safe Ale 05 going on this thing. Oh, that's not a big deal. Let's go out. So I'm going to pull that out of the refrigerator now. The regular US 05. I'm going to let that just kind of warm up to room temperature, and then I'm going to reheat it with a little bit of filtered water inside before I pitch this thing. But it's going to take a little while cooling this thing down. So I'm going to, I right now have my chest freezer sitting at 10 degrees. If you can see that back there, probably can't. And the reason I do that is because it's nice and cold. And then when I put this thing in here, it'll help cool the beer down a little faster. And then I'll set it for 67 after I get it set in there in the probe on here. But that extra coolness will help the beer cool faster than if I just have it sitting at 67 now. So I always chill this thing down to like way below freezing and then let it sit in there. So inside here, I have my lizard lamp and my little dehumidifier thing. and I let it sit against two of the walls right away. And then I pull it away from the walls after it gets done, but I'll let it sit against two of the walls right away. And I'll let it kind of sit and cool down. And then I'm going to throw my tilt hydrometer there too. And once I can read that the tilt's gotten down to a certain range, then I'll go back and pull it away from the walls and let it kind of just do its thing while it's fermenting. So any questions on this process, this whole process stuff, let me know, you guys. Super stoked that all you guys came on, asked questions, and basically kept me company for 45 minutes while that thing boiled. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Hit that like and subscribe button for me. If you have questions, again, leave them in the comment section, even if it's after the live and people are watching this later. Happy to answer any questions. So appreciate all you guys. Have you guys a good rest of your weekend. Have a beer for me, and I need another one. So cheers. We'll see you guys next time, and thanks for stopping in.